We get reports now from both sides of the U.S.-Mexico border. MSNBC's Stephanie Ruhle is in McAllen, Texas for us, and NBC News correspondent Gabe Gutierrez is just across the border from Texas in Matamoros, Mexico. Stephanie, we'll begin with you. You're looking at how this policy is playing with Evangelicals, a group that has long stood behind and supported President Trump. What are they saying about this?
You know, they're somewhat split, Willie. There is a new Quinnipiac poll that says 66% of Americans asked they oppose the child separation policy. That sounds logical. But 55% of Republicans, they support it. And within that 55%, you still have a large majority of evangelicals. I know you pointed it out a moment ago, Franklin Graham, who has said he opposes this, and some other evangelicals. But for the most part, they stand with the president because they believe his ideology supports their overall values. And that's what's stunning, because I just want you to take a listen specifically to those who are right here in this community in McAllen. Listen.
Blind faith is how you have to trust the Lord. We have to put our faith in Him.
But the Lord and elected officials are two different things.
Oh,
sir.
yes, but they're ministers of God for righteousness. I don't believe any person is in any office that God has not allowed it to be there.
Pastor Bill Sutton leads Trinity Baptist Church in McAllen, Texas.
So some say that if you look at these detention centers, you must not care about these kids.
Well, I do care about these kids. I just don't know what to do, but I've got to put my trust somewhere. I can't solve it, and so I'm trying to believe that the government will do that which is right because they're ministers of God for righteousness' sake.
Mike Jones, an evangelical Christian from North Carolina, questions whether the jarring images of children at detention centers are even real.
I don't believe it. I think it's all a big lie. Like I said, I don't think that that's happening. I don't think that the people who are so-called being separated are what the news is portraying them to be.
Also in North Carolina, Antioch Baptist Church pastor Kenneth Pardue places the blame squarely on the parents.
Who am I upset with? It's the parents. The parents who bring their children to the border to violate the law.
But other prominent Christians are publicly blaming the administration. More than 600 leaders and members of the United Methodist Church signed a formal complaint against Attorney General Jeff Sessions, a member of their church, who quoted the Bible to defend the immigration policy, accusing him, among others, of child abuse. An evangelical Franklin Graham, son of the late Reverend Billy Graham, didn't mince words on the Christian Broadcasting Network.
I think it's disgraceful. It's terrible to see families ripped apart, and I don't support that one bit. And I blame the politicians for the last 20, 30 years that have allowed this to escalate to the point where it is today.
But Pastor Sutton says none of them speak for him or anyone else.
Every Baptist church is autonomous and independent.
But for these evangelical Christians, there's no question about standing by a president championing their ideology.
What happened was millions and millions of people all seemed to wake up at the same time, and they began to have a sense of nationalism. Out of that awakening, Donald Trump said all the things that the people wanted to hear. He believed them, and he's true, he's honest.
And that's why Willie, I just want to share this one point with you. That last pastor that I spoke to, you would think here in McAllen he would be entrenched in this migrant crisis. He wasn't exactly up to speed, and it's not because he's ill-informed, because here in McAllen, right in the epicenter, Willie, it's not a crisis. It's an issue. I thought I was going to come down here and see people in the streets, and it would be chaotic, sort of this idea that migrants are flooding in. It's just not the case. It's definitely an issue. This is a border area. They need to be careful of their relationship with Mexico. They care about border security. But every store I walk by, in almost every window, there's a help wanted sign. The immigration issue is there are more jobs than there are people. And the more people I talk to on the ground here, they're saying, we've got to find a solution. So I just want to impress upon people at home. Here in McAllen, where it's actually happening, there are not migrants that have overrun this town. There are not criminals who have stolen jobs. There are people that are trying to figure out the right path for immigration. It's very different than what you're hearing.
Yeah, that's really important context, and so interesting, Steph, to hear those pastors put it in a context of politicians being agents of God, therefore I implicitly trust them to do what is right, and therefore I implicitly trust that the decisions they're making, specifically on this issue now, are correct. As we pointed out a moment ago, Pope Francis disagrees with that assessment. He calls the policy immoral.
Really, I mean, to your exact point, it was that Baptist pastor, when he kept talking about morality, I was saying, you know, I brought up President Trump and his history and the fact that he lies, and he stopped me and said, but in the end, God wanted him to be president, and it's God's will, and we have to give the president the path. And he felt, like many others, you don't criticize God, you shouldn't criticize our leaders. So for someone like me sitting across, I was shocked to hear that, but I certainly listened.
So revealing. Stephanie Ruhle, thanks so much. We'll let you go and get ready for your show.
Here's the hypocritical thing. Can I just make one point to you? For these who, the point that is pretty hypocritical, for these pastors who talk so much about the most important thing is pro-life, it's stunning that they're willing to say that about unborn children, but they're not willing to consider these children who are being torn from their mothers and have no idea when they'll see them again. When you think about the welfare of a child, it should possibly never begin or end.
As you pointed out in your piece as well, though, there are many pastors and many religious leaders who are coming out against this policy. Steph, we'll see you in just a few minutes, of course, at the top of the hour at 9 o'clock.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.